Today I'm going to read to you from Dragon Magazine number 74. This magazine was published in June 1983. With this article, I'm just going to read it to you directly and not provide any commentary because it is actually an article which just gives campaign ideas and information to you, and I will let that stand on its own. It's also quite long, and there are some complicated pronunciations in here, so hopefully you'll forgive me and I'll do my best. This is Seven Swords, Blades of the Realms by Ed Greenwood. No spells tonight, Elminster said with a smile. It is of swords I would speak. Swords? Magic swords, I take it? I asked, settling myself in the chair across from him. Elminster grinned through his curling beard. As ever, your mind runs swiftly on a narrow track. Yes, magic blades, but only after you tell of the famed swords of this world, for I am most interested in the toing and froing betwixt both our worlds. Mayhap some blades have made the journey. No problem, I replied, reaching for this, that, and other books from the shelves surrounding us both. Thus armed, I told the old sage of King Arthur's Excalibur and erudite blade of Sir Lancelot of the Lake. I spoke of Charlemagne's Joyeuse and Flambeau, the flame cutter, and the swords of his stalwart paladins Roland, Durendal, Oliver, Glorious, and Hauteclair, very bright, Rogero, Balisarda, and Rinaldo Frusberta. I turned to Siegfried and told the sage of that hero's swords, Gram, meaning grief, Mimung, and Balmung. I read aloud from Spencer of the Blades, Creusor and Sanglamore, and then passed on what I could find of the Cid's blade to Zona, Orlair of the Danes Courtaine, meaning the short sword, and Sauvignon, Sir Belvis's Morglay, meaning big glaive, and almost 100 more. I read from old books, modern fantasy stories, and guidebooks to royal regalia until the night had quite gone, and Elminster had filled his pipe almost 40 times. When I ran down, he nodded approvingly at me in the gray half-dawn. Your tongue proved even longer than I had hoped, he said. I recognized no blade of the realms with certainty in all your gabble, but no matter. In return, I will tell you of 7 blades of power. Oh yes, there are countless others, but only 7 this time, mind. Blades that I have seen with my own eyes in the realms. What he said thereafter I have set down below. Name: Ajatha, also called the Drinker. Description: Ajatha is a +2 longsword of fine blue steel, hilted with steel in single crossquillion and a plain spherical polished knobbed pommel. Set in the heart of the tang, where the quillions meet just above the fine chain wrapping of the grip, is a large 1-inch diameter cabochon cut black sapphire worth 6,000 gold pieces. There are no known markings or runes on the blade, and it does not shed any radiance. However, upon touching any magic item, not including scrolls but including potions, if these are poured over the blade or it is immersed in them, Ajatha siphons off magical energy, causing the item in question to glow, shedding a pale green-white luminance or radiance until the item is drained of Dwemer, or the sword and the item are separated. The Drinker can never permanently drain an artifact, but it can steal the magic of lesser items. In all cases, the touch of Ajatha causes 1 power or effect per round of contact, the item to be nullified for 1 to 4 turns after contact. If the item has limited charges or operates but once, sufficient contact with Ajatha can drain it entirely of magic. The blade absorbs the Dwemer into itself in a peculiar way, retaining magical energy to protect itself and its bearer. Per charge drain or round of contact, many lesser items of magic will be drained after 13 or so rounds of contact. Ajatha gains 2 hit points. It has 9 hit points worth of personal strength and may add any magically drained points to its own without known limit. Any attacks on Ajatha or its bearer must exhaust these phantom hit points before they can harm the physical entities of blade or bearer. When reduced to its original 9 hit points, Ajatha cannot absorb further damage to its bearer and is itself vulnerable. Anyone grasping the grip of Ajatha can receive its hit point protection. There is room for a maximum of 2 bare human hands to grab the grip at one time. Ajatha, it must be noted, cannot repeatedly drain the vitality of the same item. After 2 contacts with any single item, the drinker cannot drain anything more from it. But note also that a contact, if uninterrupted, can continue for up to 1 turn before any bearer must withdraw or risk the onset of feeble-mindedness due to magical backlash. 10% chance each round beyond 1 turn of continuous contact. Drained hit points gained by Ajatha in no way cure existing damage to its bearer, but merely absorb all further attacks until exhausted. Ajatha cannot drain or negate spells cast at it or its bearer, and confers no special magic resistance except immunity to psionic domination, charm spells, and similar direct mind control spells. This immunity does not extend to sleep, suggestion, ESP, or the like. Lore. The drinker is first known to have existed more than 400 years ago in the reign of Kurskos Iron Hand. It was the sword of that monarch's herald and chief counselor, Amrok of the Dwarves. Kurskos slew Amrok in a night of revelry after one shield meet, and took Ajatha the drinker, plus the enmity of the dwarves as his own. Amrok was of almost human stature, and it was often had been said Ajatha is of human and not dwarven manufacture, for it is of full size and heft for a strong, long-armed swordsman. The stories of its making are many and colorful, and most are doubtless as fanciful as the tale told by Thuri of who stole Ajatha from the palace vaults in the sack of Amrium upon the death of Kurskos. Thuri held that Ajatha was given to his grandfather by the gods and made any of the family who wielded it invulnerable in battle. Thuri was easily, almost contemptuously, slain by the first man who challenged him, a merchant from Galamshan. That merchant, whose name is lost, was slain while on caravan soon after by the mischievous Kenku. In like manner, the drinker has often changed hands over the years, usually remaining with any one owner only a short time. Elminster saw Ajatha 40 winters ago in the court of Nesker of Mulmaster, when the Sorcerer King was studying it to increase his own arts. It disappeared before Nesker's death and came to light briefly in reports of fighting in the Shar, apparently being wielded by one of the nomad chieftains. The sword was stolen from him, and despite sending agents far afield, he was unable to recover it. The present whereabouts of the blade are unknown. Name, Albruin. Description: Albruin is a broadsword of steel electrum silver alloy, demonstrably as effective as silver against undead and other creatures who suffer peculiar or particular effects from contact with that metal. It is +1 to hit and +3 damage. It sheds an eerie blue radiance up to 10 feet radius when drawn from its scabbard. It is of chaotic neutral alignment, intelligence 7, ego 13, communicates by speech, alignment tongue, common, elvish, drow, thieves' cant, and can read languages and magical writings. Albruin's bearer will or can at will activate and maintain by concentration the sword's power to detect invisible objects in a 10-foot radius. Albruin can also neutralize poison once every 3 days and heal its bearer once every 12 days. These powers are evoked at the will of the bearer or by the sword if the bearer is unconscious, and Albruin deems it advantageous to itself to activate either power. Physical contact between Albruin and the flesh of the bearer is necessary for the powers to work. Lore: Albruin is believed to be the creation of the long-dead smith Surdi, who was famous in his day for the craftsmanship of the work that came out of the forges of Icebound Glister, where he worked ore fresh from the mines above the city on the edge of the glacier. The blade itself evades questions as to its origin. There are no markings or definitive touches of workmanship that identify Albruin as the work of anyone in particular. Albruin was held for decades in the royal house of Cormyr, kept as a family treasure but seldom, due to its alignment, borne by the kings of that land. It was stolen from the palace at Suzail for some 90 winters ago by the thief Naipar, otherwise known as Nipe, a halfling who was soon arrested in Walloon by soldiers of Cormyr and slain when he attempted to escape. Nipe did not have the blade when seized and did not reveal its whereabouts. It was rumored amongst the thieves that the place that he had sold it to a, quote, gray trader, otherwise known as a fence, by the name of Bluskin Schultel, who had a merchant barge on Wyvern water, and that Bluskin had sailed from Walloon up the river on the northern shore of the Wyvern water and delivered the blade to a waiting buyer. The blade's whereabouts were uncertain for some 24 winters until a lady of the high birth in Silgant, one Shamur, found the blade left behind in her bedchamber by a visitor fleeing the city guard. He never returned, and Shamur sold it when she married. It was bought by an adventurer visiting the city of Silgant on matters of trade, gold, quote, gold for mercenaries, and wielded thereafter in several minor skirmishes about the Easting Reach before its owner died in an ambush. His slayer, the adventurer Prince Thalm of Teflom, used Albruin to help him take the lands of Impiltur forcibly from his father's rule and found his own kingdom. Thalm eventually died by magic, hired by his father Kursker, who was unable to regain control of the lost lands, and Albruin was acquired by one of Thalm's warriors who fled the dead king's keep and took the blade back westward to the Dale lands. This warrior, one Adjus by name, perished at the hands of brigands on a northern road, and Albruin disappeared from view, but not before Adjus had sought out a sage, Elminster, of course, in Shadowdale to learn the blade's true nature and powers. After the death of Adus, the trail of the sword is hidden for some 8 winters, but it is known to have been in the hands of the mercenary general Malachar on his visit to Zentil Keep in the spring of the 9th year thereafter, and was identified again by the sage Murail of Sarbreen when a mercenary warrior sought him out to learn the blade's properties in that city some 6 winters beyond that time. From then to now, the whereabouts of Albruin are unknown, but Elminster is careful to remind us that its plain appearance and its ability to control many of its bearers would contribute to this anonymity. Name: Ilbratha, also known as Mistress of Battle. Description: Ilbratha is a bronze short sword with a row of 6 matched bloodstones set into the helve of the blade on its left face. Each bloodstone is worth 70 gold pieces. As an undamaged set of stones, they might bring 500 to 600 gold pieces if sold shrewdly. Ilbratha does not glow and bears no inscriptions. It is +1 to hit and +1 damage, and when grasped by a fighter of any alignment, its powers will be communicated telepathically to the holder. This is a feature of its magical manufacture. It is not sentient. Ilbratha gains its nickname from its powers, which are very useful in combat. When grasped, flesh to hand grip, and mentally ordered, Ilbratha can, with its bearer, jump, as in the spell, 1 leap only 3 times per day, blink itself and its bearer once per day, and create a mirror image of itself and its bearer once per day. It also rings like a struck chime or a tubular bell when it is touching magic. This includes spell effects from devices and physical contact with enchanted items, but not physical effects, such as stinking cloud or gust of wind caused by an already cast spell. This power is warning only and is in no way a protection against magic. Lore: Ilbratha was created by unknown hands at the behest of Azun I, long-dead king of Cormyr. He bore it once into battle at Ithmong in his war with Tithir, and then lost it in a storm that wrecked his ship on the rocks of the Neck. The sword was found by fishermen of Tizir and sold to a rich merchant, Savan of Amwater. He took it west on caravan along the Trader's Road and the river Troyanthar to Scornmudbel, where he sold it to Felis Erm, a merchant of Phoenicia. Felis brought it overland through Cormyr, where it was recognized in Arabel. Agents of King Azun attempted to recover it and slew Felis, but in the confusion, the blade was lost or stolen by one of the agents for himself. All trace of it was lost until 200 winters later, the sage Thalestum of Procampur was offered the blade for 1,500 gold pieces by a peddler from a nearby town who seemed ignorant of its true nature. Thalestum brought the blade to Elminster in Shadowdale, the only fellow lore master interested in swords whom Thalestum trusted. Elminster identified the blade from the writings of Azun I, the old king's great-grandson, had then just come to the throne, and Thalestum bore it back toward Procampur by way of Tilver's Gap and Esembra. But he was never seen again and did not reach Procampur. His ruined diary, his staff, and a skeleton were found some years later when the pool of Yevon in Battledale was dragged, but the sword was not found. Elminster believes it in the hands of brigands or perhaps mercenaries who have not since drawn the blade in battle near the dales. Name Namara, otherwise known as the sword that never sleeps. Description: Namara is a long sword, +2 to hit, +4 damage, of fine steel forging. It glows with a pale mauve radiance when drawn and spits white sparks when striking other metal. On one side of the blade is etched in common Namara, and on the other face never sleeps. The bearer may at will evoke the sword's power to emanate silence 15-foot radiance. Namara is as heavy as a normal weapon, but will float on top of any liquid, fresh water, brine, oil, wine, it has so far been dropped into. The sword has no alignment or sentience. Lore. Namara appears in many legends and tall tales, but the term the sword that never sleeps appears to be derived only from the inscription on the blade and does not refer to any specific property of the sword. Its origin is unknown. Namara appears to have existed for as long as tales have survived, wielded by such mythic heroes as Eth and Brensil the Tall. Even the most critical of sages, Kumur the skeptic, first speaker of Evernoster, cannot determine Namara's probable time or place of origin, or find any references in the tales of a world to a time before Namara was forged. Within the last 500 years, Namara has been the blade of Cyrus the Great, founder of and a blade borne there by his descendants for 3 generations. The fourth, Orescus, bore Namara north to found the city of Mirabar. Orescus died without issue, and Namara was carefully preserved atop his tomb in the city. There it remained for 60 winters until Mirabar was overrun and plundered in the Goblin Wars. The Goblin chieftain, Nithong, seized the sword and bore it back to a ravine so deep in the mountains that the goblins, who were subsequently almost eradicated from the north, still hold this ravine today. The blade remained in goblin hands for almost 200 seasons, until a goblin named Gar was slain by a band of adventurers known as the Company of the Griffin. The leader of the band, a warrior called Flar, gave the blade to Tholmar, One Eye, of Port Lost in exchange for training some 80 winters ago. Tholmar bore the blade until his death in the cold winter, whereupon it passed to the mistress of Port Lost, Stormraven the Proud Queen. Stormraven, who rode and fought at the head of her men with her jet black hair flowing wildly about her, briefly made Port Lost great. She is remembered fondly by old warriors and will live in fireside tales. At length she married a former foe, Parladolf of Neverwinter, and gave Namara to her son Rivenhelm. Rivenhelm, who became one of the greatest knights, passed the blade on to Tamper Tencoin, an adventurer. Tencoin stood over the wounded knight in battle with the mercenary company of the Flaming Fist for most of the day in a vain attempt to save Rivenhelm's life. The tiny band held on till nightfall, when the mercenaries fell back and drove in their tracking dogs to ravage the wounded enemy. Rivenhelm handed Namara to Tencoin in the darkness and said, "This is yours now." Leaving a trail of blood behind him, Rivenhelm crawled forward to choke the life out of one dog and died under the jaws of a dozen more. Tencoin lost the blade when he was poisoned in the Whistling Wizard Inn 4 winters ago. The poison made him mad for days, and when he returned to his senses, Namara was gone. Elminster, who saw the blade when Tencoin visited Shadowdale some years before this event, believes it was stolen by local thieves and will soon turn up again. And when it does, Tamper Tencoin will come looking for it. Name, Shezenlim. Description, a scimitar of rather poor steel with keen edge, with a guard of iron curved into rearing serpents. Its grip is of leather dyed red, but this may now have been replaced. Shezelim is neutral evil, has an intelligence of 16 and an ego of 14, and communicates by speech. Alignment tongue, common, thieves' cant, orcish. It is +1 to hit, can detect magic in a 10-foot radius if the bearer so wills, while wielding it unsheathed, and in like manner can locate object to 120 feet radius. It can also detect secret doors in a 5-foot radius at the bearer's will and read any non-magical languages or maps. It will heal its bearer once per day at the bearer's will and has a special purpose, to slay bards. Any bard struck by Shezelim strikes will be disintegrated unless the victim saves versus spell. Lore. Shezelim was created by, or at least under, the orders and with the assistance of Lazoril of the Red Wizards of Thay, in order to destroy his enemies, the Harpers. Little is known of the Harpers. They consist of bards and a few rangers, are known by the device of the silver moon and a silver harp, operate in the northern regions on both sides of the Great Desert, and are a secretive organization rather than a band or race of people. Of the bards of great power, only Mintilper is thought not to be a member, and of the high-level rangers, only Thulraven and Estilfor are believed to be independent of the Harpers. It is not clear if the Harpers are anything more than a private club or fellowship at present, although in the past they have acted in concert to keep kingdoms in the northern lands and in Dale lands small in power, and on at least 2 occasions have forcibly prevented the expansion of farms and settlements into elven woods. The cause of Lazaril's enmity toward the Harpers is unknown. Elminster saw Shezelim when Alzul, a captain of the armies of Thay, brought it to Archendale to slay the ranger dove. Mistakenly, Alzul attacked the wrong woman, the knight Jalismer, and was himself slain. Alzul's men recovered Shezelim and their captain's body, but were later killed by men of Archendale over a code of conduct dispute. Shezelim disappeared from view briefly, was later identified by the sage Helavaster of Hillsfar when brought to that city by the caravan master Lamako, Tarsak, and subsequently passed into the hands of Lamako's superior, Mir. The scimitar does not appear to have passed on to Mir's superiors in Zentil Keep, unless one of the lords of that city is hiding it from his fellow lords for some reason, and may have been stolen, hidden, or passed to another by Mir before his disappearance. The blade's present whereabouts are unknown. Name, Susk, otherwise known as the Silent Sword. Description: Susk is a slim longsword of fine make and good oiled slaked steel, devoid of adornment or inscription. It does not glow of itself or even reflect light, so that it does not appear to be metal from afar. Its nickname comes from its magical silence. The sword never rings, clatters, scrapes, or emits any sound. A blade struck against it may ring, but Susk itself remains silent. The silence in no way affects creatures, spells, objects, or any area about the blade. Susk is +3 to hit, but does normal damage 1 to 8 / 1 to 12. It has no apparent intelligence or sentience, and only one other magical property. It levitates involuntarily. That is, it can never rise, fall, or move in any way by itself, but always remains stationary when released, even in midair. It can be moved while so floating by being struck with other objects or by magical effects, such as telekinesis, but will stop quickly when such force is removed. Susk cannot therefore be effectively hurled at an opponent or tossed away to prevent its capture. It will stop mere inches from the point of release and hang in midair. There is no known limit to or way to nullify this power. Any creature may grasp, and if not a spellcaster to whom cold steel is forbidden, wield, Susk without harm. It confers no magic resistance or spell immunities upon the bearer. Lore. Susk is a blade mentioned repeatedly in tales and legends of the North. Its origin is unknown and curiously never mentioned in any folklore, but it seems to have always been around in the hands of someone or another. Its present whereabouts are a mystery. The sage Elminster can speak of its location with certainty only over a short span of time, beginning some 20 winters ago, when he recognized it in the hands of Abada, a northern prince of the fallen kingdom, who was then a proud wanderer and bandit leader. Abada was challenged by Distil of Nesme at the court of Alastriel, High Lady of Silvery Moon, in Elminster's presence. During the fight that followed, Elminster and at least one other, the adventurer Urin of Yartar, recognized the blade for what it was. Bada was slain in combat, and Distil rightfully took the blade. Shortly thereafter, he was found dead by his campfire on the Troll Moors, and Ernin was seen in Longsaddle not much afterward, brandishing a blade that was demonstrably Susk, to Ernin's eternal dismay. When he let go of it involuntarily in the middle of a tavern brawl, it hung in midair beyond his grasp as he was dragged to the floor and stabbed to death. A local bully, Ulsk Harpel, claimed the blade, but was found dead in a nearby alley within the night, the blade gone. It disappeared from view at that time, but recent reports from Shadowdale some 6 winters back and Mulemaster 2 winters ago suggest that the strange blade is still changing hands the hard way amongst the adventurers and caravan merchants of the realms. Name: Taragarth, also known as the Blood Brand. Taragarth is a bastard sword of steel, fire blackened along the length of the blade so that only sharpened edges gleam. On the base of the blade, just ahead of the simple crossbar guard, is a ruand etched into the metal. The ruand is non-magical and evidently the mark of the blade's maker, but who the maker was has been lost over time. Taragarth requires strength and stature to wield, but while it is held unsheathed, the bearer is protected from fire, effects equal to ring of fire resistance, and will be protected by feather fall if descending 10 feet or more precipitously. Taragarth strikes normally, but does +3 damage. It does not glow and is not sentient. While gripping Targarth, even sheathed, the bearer is protected from ESP and detection spells, including no alignment. Such spells will simply have no effect. This protection does not affect charm, sleep, other control-related spells, or psionic attacks. Lore. Targarth was forged by Elfgar of Silvery Moon in the early days of the North and was given to the champion Eroth when he led the armies of the kingdoms of the North against the trolls of the Evermoors. The might of the trolls was broken at the long battle of 9 days' duration across the moors, and Targarth was brandished aloft bloodily so often by the valiant Eroth that it was dubbed the Blood Brand. Much later, when Eroth was gray-bearded, Reuth of Silvery Moon died, and the throne passed to his son. Eroth, grieving for his lord, and none too fond of the sadistic, proud Tulvin, Reuth's son, took ship west from Waterdeep, sailing first to the Isle of Torridge at the sun's setting, and later to the Moonshae Isles. There, with his wife and 6 sons, Eroth founded the city of Vlon. His descendants, the nucleus of a group swelled by other disenchanted and dispossessed mainlanders, were to become the feuding merchant houses of the Moonshae Isles. But Eroth's sword was not seen on his voyage, and most legends hold that he left it in Silvery Moon, where it has been lost in some concealed hoard or in one of the many warren-like caverns beneath the city. A few sages know that, in truth, Eroth hid the blade in a ruined well on the Isle of Torridge so that his argumentative sons would not fight over it. There it lay while ages passed until an exploration party of Illithids found it and carried it to their underground city on the mainland near what is now Baragost. There it was studied for only a short time before a band of adventurers plundered much of the city and gained it. The names of the band are now lost. One was a fighter who later took service in the merchant guards of Ulm and died battling bandits on the banks of the Solduskun River. It seems likely that he bore Taragoth, but no word of it can be found after it presumably fell into the hands of the bandits until a wandering peddler offered it for sale in a market at Berdusk. It brought 400 pieces of gold from an adventurer who recognized it, but he mistakenly told a companion what he thought the sword was and was dead by the next morning. So was the companion, murdered in turn by the assassin Turl. Turl carried the blade north to the city of Scornubel, using it to pay off a debt to his guildmaster Iritan. Little is known of Iritan, who evidently ruled the guild with an iron hand for more than 20 winters, but one spring he appeared in Waterdeep, dying of poisoned wounds, and gave the blade, plus more wealth, to the wizard Maroon. Much of Maroon's wealth was lost in subsequent upheavals, and the blood brand fell into the hands of an unknown someone in Waterdeep. Where it traveled then is not known, but 4 winters ago it was brought to Elminster when he was visiting Westgate for examination by a swarthy, much-scarred fighting man of Calimshan, who gave his name as Volf. The present whereabouts of Volf and the blade Taragoth are unknown. The end. Well, thank you for reading and listening to this article with me that is about the 7 swords, Blades of the Realm.